Oh, the books got around for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is ethical employment advocate and the author of the book Employment Ethics, no other than Mr. Travis Schachtner.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Travis, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Um, my name's Travis Schachtner. I am an electromechanical systems instructor at St. Paul College. And after listening to my students interact with potential employers, it started sending me down a path of the balance in an ethical employment relationship and how we as a society tend to overemphasize the leadership roles and the business side of employment, but we don't really talk about um, what their responsibilities and duties are. So where it really came from was a simple question that was asked that I really didn't have an answer to out of the gate, and that was, if all employers can demand a basic level of work ethic, what should all to have a balanced relationship, what should all employees be able to demand of employers? And then how do we set those boundaries? So and it's about that basic understanding of that balanced relationship. I make demands of you, and you actively address my demands, and um, you can make demands of me, and I actively seek to meet your demands.
Mr. Travis Schachtner, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. What's the most glaring ethical failure in today's employer employee relationships that motivate you to write this book?
Um, the most glaring one currently, I would say, is our the obsession around wages. Um, we've allowed the employers to say our wages are controlled by the labor market, but that means that they can ignore the needs of the community that they hire from. So, what we really should be arguing about, instead of fair wages or uh, living wages, what we should be arguing for and fighting for is community supporting wages. The data around how much it costs to live in a community exists. And instead of tracking what it would take to meet the labor market, it should be, what should the employers be paying to make sure that their communities that they employ from thrive?
Interesting, Mr. Travis. Interesting indeed. Why is redefining this relationship as more than economic change critical for both human dignity and business success?
The reason that it's for more is because businesses the modern view of business is very short term and based on profit. Whereas if you were taking an older look, which would be more of how the legacy of a business can thrive, right? So,
Yes.
for example, in work ethic, there's very simple, straightforward. There's usually four, and the key four ingredients to work ethic is productivity, reliability, autonomy, and collaboration. I want you to show up and do the job. I want you to be able to depend on you to do the job without watching you. I want you to be able to do the job on your own, and I want you to be able to work with others, because employment by default is a team thing. Even if you have one employee, that's an employee employer interaction, and you need to be able to collaborate with each other to get the job done. Whereas for an employer, what employees should be able to demand is, hey, if I'm going to work for you, I need a safe and secure workspace. I need, I don't care if we like each other. We are not a family. You're paying me to do a job. I want an accountable, professional relationship. We don't need to be friends. I'm here to do a job. We respect each other enough to just have a professional relationship. You're having the business is having a responsible impact on their surrounding environment, because a business, you can't have a thriving legacy business without future employees available to you. So if you're poisoning your surrounding environment, you're killing your own potential legacy. And finally, is that community supporting wage. You're making sure that all of your employees are able to get their needs met, because at the end of the day, we're at an understanding that I want you to be able to come here, do the job, get the job done that I ask, and then go home and teach your kids math or participate in the local school boards, participate in your local government. When you're paying people too little, you're removing that ability to participate with their friends and their surrounding communities.
Definitely. Let's empower community out there. And
Mm-hmm.
how does your framework explicitly address the inherent power imbalance between employers and employees?
Well, that's where it comes down. It really comes down to accountability, right? Um, my work ethic, I am 100% accountable to my employer for my work ethic. But there needs to be an understanding that employees have, uh, the best way that employees can hold accountability over a business is through their government. That is where that voice for the employees is actually established and heard. And employers have understood this for a very long time. That is why they're both undermining it. They work hard to undermine the strength of unions and organization, while at the same time working to weaken regulations and employment standards. Every single one of the employment ethics that I point out in the book, we cover it covers how their different countries have um, entities that are in charge of making sure that these are met. But in the United States, safe and secure workspace is controlled by OSHA. The responsible professional relationship is controlled by the EEOC. Responsibility to your environment is controlled by the EPA, and your wage, the minimum wage, is controlled by labor and wage division. But the minimum wage has the views on minimum wage has been corrupted over the decades. It has been established. EPA is the same way. All of them are seeing the weakening of the ability to hold businesses accountable, while at the same time the organization of the workforce is also being undermined.
Well, Mr. Travis, what are the three non negotiable pillars of an ethical employer employee relationship in your model?
I have, like I said, I have the four. It's not really three, um, and it's a give and take, right? All it doesn't remember or matter what the relationship is. Um, it is that relationship is balanced. And if people who are married, I try to meet the needs of my wife, and my wife tries to meet my needs. And that's where this comes in. I try to meet their needs of productivity, reliability, autonomy, and collaboration. And the employer should also be working to meet my needs, which are a safe and secure workspace, accountable professional relationship, responsible impact on the surrounding environment, and a community supporting wage. And these needs are actually established using Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you I want to make my you have your basic needs, your needs for safety and security, your needs for community and love, your needs for esteem from your community, and then self-actualization, right? Well, all
Yes.
of the employer needs, all of the needs that the workforce makes on the employer are basic or considered basic needs. That's the combination of the physiological and the safety needs. Whereas the needs for the employer or the employee that the employer is establishing, like productivity is the key need that employers need. But the rest of them are really what are called higher needs. They fit in that community, they fit in that esteem, those levels. So before I can be willing to, before I can be able to really strive to meet my needs for collaboration, my needs for esteem, I need to be certain that my needs for my wages are enough to make it so I can meet all my familial needs. I need to make sure that I need to be safe in the assumption that my workplace is a safe and secure workplace. And so that balancing act of what are the needs of both, and then where they actually are, that's where that all comes into play. And you can't really, it's hard for to justify, hey, you want me to work with you, but you're not changing out any of my equipment to make sure I am safe. You're making arbitrary demands or arbitrarily undermining my work, so we're not having a professional relationship. Um, you're I've just found out you're poisoning the environment in some way, or not taking not even the poisoning part, but not taking responsibility for your impact around the environment. These are all really hard issues that need to be established.
Mr. Travis, how do you respond to leaders who say ethics are nice, but shareholders demand efficiency and profit above all?
I can understand the demand for efficiency and profit. I mean, the big debate right now is all around AI, but in my field that I teach, which is basically industrial automation, in all actuality, AI has existed in because that's what automation is. It's replacing human jobs, right? With a machine.
True.
So all AI is just it's the automation of more white collar work, things that people really didn't think would be able to be replaced. So we have that major disconnect there, and I understand the demand for efficiencies and profit, but when you're making record profit on the backs of employees who can't afford to meet their needs, that becomes an ethical problem. And inside a capitalist system, what happens is in an unethical system, you have a handful of people hoarding that money. But in the capitalist system, it is wage distribution, it is income and distribution. In these people who are at the top should be paying more in their wages to ensure that their profits are seen across the board. Instead, by hoarding it, you're hoarding a resource that is in huge demand in order to meet modern needs, and then blaming people for not meeting their demands when they're meeting things like, we have established that an 8-hour workday is a full-time that's full-time employment, but you're not valuing my work for full-time employment. So that's where the that relationship between employee and employer really comes into play.
Mr. Travis, how does radical transparency look like in practice, like salaries, decision making, and financial health without causing chaos?
Well, I, that's the catch. I don't think it would be radical transformation for companies to just be public about what they're paying people. That just be public. This is every level from top to bottom what they're all making and being public about it. That would be considered radical transformation, but it actually isn't a radical move. It's just being informative so that way people can know where to properly move to. to be to actually be able to understand what the companies are doing in their environments around them, right?
Hmm.
The radical, it seems like we're in a time where radical seems common sense and decent, and it really shouldn't be that way. Um, Making it so that people are uncomfortable talking about what they are making, that only benefits the employers and hinders employees from knowing who are the wage leaders in my region. That's becomes a huge problem. When I was one of my first classes that I taught, we had an employee come in or an employer come in, and they were bragging about how much they were paying their employees. Um, but the young people that I had in my classroom, they were bragging about the profits they were making and all that stuff. But the young people in my classroom were raising their hand and they were asking questions like, "Well, you made hundreds of $1 million in profits last year. Is your building air conditioned?" No. Well, why not? You made hundreds of mil. Is it not? That is employee safety concern, especially in my region where it can get 100 degrees outside and heavy humidity. Like, so you're not going to air condition your building. How much of your profits does that take out? If I in the region that you employ from, it costs $50,000 to live in the area. That's public information. So if it costs $50,000 to live in the area and you're paying $30,000 in wages, like your expectation is that I work full time for you and get another job. Like the dark is what really allows these unethical practices to thrive, and it's really on the workforce to really drag this into the light.
Definitely. And Mr. Travis, as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Um, well, my short term goal. This book comes out July 7th. My short term goals is that everyone reads the book, and we really start working together to get this done. My key component to this was, like I said, we can make a list of what employer ethics are, but we don't have that common terminology. Whereas with work ethic, we just say work ethic and people know what that is. So my short and long term goal is that we really start adopting technology to make it easier for us to communicate. Um, but outside of that, I do have other ideas for books in mind. I'm someone who really believes in like those Maslowian principles of how to meet their needs. And my if this well, it's not an if when this once this is I'm through with this process, I had working on another book to come out.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Travis, and looking forward for more success. What would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be an author like you?
Do like act I am a big believer in like learn how to enjoy failure as long as you tried. So you can as long as you're willing
True.
to like try something, sit down. If it doesn't take off, sit down, learn from your mistakes. Nothing saying you can't try again, but the first step is try. Do. Just
Yes.
whatever happens happens, and then like I know with this being my first book, I know I've made plenty of mistakes, but I'm learning it so I can do better with my next book, and then I can do better with my next book. It's a process to get through all this stuff. So start by just writing stuff down. Do it.
Do it, people. Stop procrastinating if you have the passion to write, 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 write. And Mr. Travis, can you share books? Share the books that influence your journey.
Um, the the I read a lot. I am not I do not tie down to a single anything. Like right now, I'm reading um the Warhammer series. Um, but what the
one of the two of the biggest ones. I got motivation and personality and the theory of human motivation. These were books written by Abraham Maslow, um, who was the creator of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I've also gotten I a really big thing that I hold is this. It's a thesis called the romanticization of leadership. It came out in the 80s, and it was about how people create blind spots, giving leaders a lot of credit when they don't need it. Like we need, sometimes you need to be humble and willing to acknowledge, like, hey, yes, Steve Jobs was a great, did leadership stuff. Okay, he's not someone that should be emulated because he would throw coffee cups at people. The people who really designed the iPhone isn't Steve Jobs. It was the engineers under Steve Jobs that designed it. He just knew what he wanted.
True.
So that leadership, he knew, he had a vision for what he wanted, but it was really the engineers and the testers under him who designed and gave it to him. So we don't give credit to Jobs for the vision. Give credit to the engineers for, again, doing.
Yes, definitely. Just like watching movies, we always see the authors, the actors and the actors, but
Mm-hmm.
we we seldom notice who directed it. Oh, it was a nice movie. Who directed it? Just like that, right, Mister?
The who directed it, who was the cameraman, who was the sound
Yes,
guy. Like, there's so many parts to those things. Yep.
definitely. So, how does your model engage with the role of unions in balancing power? Is it collective bargaining essential?
Um, it is the roles of unions. It's a way to empower unions even more. Like I said, there is a there is it's hard to define. As before this, it was really hard to easily define, like, here's what I want, here's what I want, right? Work ethic, and then like, and I want you to make sure I'm safe and blah blah blah. Like, all the list was long, whereas employers would just go, I just want a strong work ethic. Well, okay, but when we don't have that floor, you can say strong, but what is a basic work ethic, right? But when I wrote my dissertation, um, my it, my model was for when I was doing a wage study. Like, this is minimum what you should be paid. It was for someone who was willing to work full time, who was 18 years old, a high school dropout, and an orphan, and had a criminal record. Like, you just minimal. Like, this guy is all they're bringing to the table is their back. They're willing to do the work. If you're we all agree that in our society, this is what a full time job is. What that person should be able to put a roof over their head, food on the table, transportation to and from work, and then enough money to, like, set a money aside for savings and go out to the bar every once in a while if they want to. Well, for an 18-year-old, but go play games. but but it was
True.
just a basic, like, what is the basic living? And we're not, stop talking about strong. What is basic? Once we get that floor established, then we can talk about, like, what does a strong employment ethic, what does strong ethics represent, what does a strong work ethic represent? But we don't have a floor. So one of the things I did was, there's a, a wage should be budgetable. You should be able to make standard budgeting practices. So it was 50% of your wage goes to your needs. The modern budget practice follows a 50-30-20 rule. 50% of your budget goes to wage, or to your needs. 30% of your budget goes to your wants. 20% of your budget goes to savings. And then you take that. You can, once you get the numbers for needs, a 1 bedroom apartment, transportation to and from work, and food on the table. Once you have those three numbers, you double that. That gives you what your take home pay should be. And then you add back in taxes. That's what you should be able to take home if you're willing to work full time, from at one employer working full time or multiple employers. And that, not having that floor has allowed the scale on many of these things to be so far off.
Mr. Travis, how does your vision move beyond performative perks to systemic ethical change?
Um, it's recognition that this is a long road. This is not something that's going to be done overnight. Employers are like, even the greatest employers are going to be fighting some of these, and it's mostly due to the fact that the larger established employers aren't following it. It's hard for a mom and pop shop to meet the needs of their employees that live in a community that they want to see thrive. They open their own mom and pop shop, but they're competing against a multinational corporation that can ignore some of the rules. They can say, at least we're paying minimum wage, and the mom and pop shop is going, yeah, but we care about our community, and if we financially care about our community, if we want to make sure that our community is thriving and healthy, we're not going to follow any of these any we're going to make sure that we're having a positive interaction with the environment because we live here. That's going to cost them more money. Whereas the multinationals, like, I'm going to do the minimum and I'm fighting to maintain to go below the minimum. So they're in order to compete with that multinational, they have to go down with them. And that's where part of that problem lies, is you need to start by enforcing employment ethics on the biggest employers, and then that once those employers are in line, it helps the mom and pop shops and the medium and smaller businesses also get in line to ensure that their employees are getting all their needs met.
Mr. Travis, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course, my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in fourth season, as well as my movie 101 review and music 101. Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Travis, what's one actionable step you urge every listeners or viewers to take tomorrow to advance this redefinition?
Talk to each other about what you're making. That's the easiest one. Be honest with each other about what you're making.
Yes, indeed. Honesty is the best policy, people. Employment Ethics by Mr. Travis Schachtner. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your book itself?
Thank you.
So where do people buy your book, Mr. Travis?
It's available on Amazon. It's available on all the ebooks and everything, and it's also available at Barnes and Noble. It's all up for sale or at pre-order right now. It comes out July 7th.
Yes, pre-order, people. Let's support Mr. Travis Schachtner, because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering employment ethics will come. So, Mr. Travis, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Mordika, people. See you soon.